Okay, hey, welcome everyone to MDY online Bible class. We are really excited. I'm really excited this morning. We have Easton Davis with us. Say hey, Easton.
Yeah.
Yeah, and um, so the whole premise of today was I wanted to get one of our college students that was home for the holidays. Um, and so I struck out on both those because I just realized. Actually, I had forgotten about that. Easton just graduated this month. So Easton, congratulations on college graduation. So, and he is actually not even in Tulsa. He's still in Searcy working his job. So he's neither a college student nor home for the holidays. But um,
I'll be
we,
home soon though.
yeah, oh, cool. Okay. But we know and love Easton, and I have really been blessed over the years knowing Easton and just getting his insight on scripture and his insight on life and everything. So I'm excited that he's here sharing with us today. But I want to begin just by reading our passage for this week, and then just let Easton uh, talk about his thoughts on this. But it's from James chapter 1, and we're doing verses 19 through 21. And it says this: Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. So get rid of all the filth and evil in your lives and humbly accept the word God has planted in your hearts, um, for it is the power to save your souls. So, so I just want to shut up now for a minute and ask Easton. Easton, what's your takeaway from this passage, and maybe where did you specifically focus or find focus in this passage? So I'll turn that over to you now.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I just want to say you say very nice things about me. I before you were ever blessed by me, I was first blessed by just the experience of MDY and our just travels and our classes and our conversations. And so I owe a lot of my life and journey in becoming a good person or a better person to the youth group and to you, Trent. So um, I it's not all the time that I get to talk to you these days, but it's definitely the basis of a lot of my life. So
Thanks
okay,
for that. That's humbling. Thank you.
so I read the and I read a different version. My version said, get rid of all moral filth, which was really funny to me. Because I don't feel like anyone ever says moral filth in the second part. But so what I did was I just read it and I was like, okay, what hits me here? What am I thinking about? So in thinking about what hit me the most was I was like, wow, this whole verse gives 10 lifelong struggles in two phrases.
Yeah.
Has the challenges of being quick to listen. It has the challenge of being slow to speak. Or I guess with the listening one, you can kind of change the words around and say being a good listener.
Yeah.
There's the challenge of being slow to speak. There's the challenge of being slow to becoming angry. There's the challenge of getting rid of all moral filth. That has to be a big challenge. And then towards the end, there's the challenge of humbly accepting the word placed in you. Which, first of all, what does that even mean? I still I have my own take on it now that I've processed it, but that phrase, accepting the word placed in you, which is what the NIV says. Really, I mean, it could really mean anything. I'll go into what I think, but I just that is a phrase to be contemplated. But so what I took away from this passage is they presented 8 challenges that are it takes someone a whole life to figure out. It takes someone an entire lifetime to figure out how to not be angry really quickly, or it takes another person just like 30 years to become like quick to listen and slow to speak. So it's funny because like this is like, yeah, like all you have to do is just like become quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry, get rid of all your moral filth, and then accept the word that's placed in you. And so this passage to me it's a lesson of patience and perspective. We were just talking about latte art, and it's hard to do latte art. And it's a lesson of patience and then perspective, because I honestly like, and it's pretty embarrassing to say this, like I honestly thought like coming out of high school and being like going to church my whole life and having like good mentors like my family and Trent and friends in the youth group, um, and then going to a Christian college where I would have to study the Bible as part of my course of study. I honestly thought like I was like, I've heard everything in here, like I've heard it all. Nothing like really surprises me anymore about the Bible, and it's really like, it's really embarrassing to say, because like really, um, I could hear it before, but I would never spend any time like actually like contemplating anything. And so when you have the perspective of like, okay, it will take you, like if you are an angry person and that's just like how you are, whether that's how you were made or like um what like your trauma or things that have happened to you have brought out of you, then it's going to take like literally years of counseling and talking about it and accepting it, and like it'll take you a long time to get over like anger.
Right.
And it's like one part of this verse. And so like it's just, to me, the takeaway is the Bible is presents so many like challenges to us as like humans, because like we suck and we are horrible and we are bad at a lot of things. And this specific verse is like 8 of them in like 2 phrases. And so if you like are reading this verse and you're like, oh, like yeah, I'm not any of these things, I do all these things well, I would say, I would encourage you to reassess that statement, because like what does moral filth mean? Like do you have optimal morality, or is that just something, a lie that you're telling yourself? So
Yeah, I think
I,
part of that moral filth, I think, would be reading this passage and saying to yourself, "Oh, I don't have a problem with any of that."
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, you just realize how like small we really are, and like really how foolish we are too. Like if you like think you're wise enough to get past all of these like this like rapid fire of like lifelong challenges, then you need to assess like your foolishness and your wisdom. And so um, I just that's just like what hit me, because I realize as I learn about myself and I go through life that I understand that like I am a lot more angry than I think I am, or I'm actually a lot more selfish and not a good listener
yeah,
as I once thought I was. And so you really have to like look inwardly. But so I took that's what I took away from it. But that's kind of like a scapegoat, and like didn't really answer the question. But it really doesn't. It answers the question, but it doesn't address what the passage is actually saying. Um, so I'll answer your second question now, and just kind of focusing in on um, one phrase. And so obviously the whole thing is like very practical advice. Like you could read it and be like, you know what, I am not like slow to speak. Like I don't listen very well. I say things all the time. I'm gonna work on that. It's very easy to read that passage and just be like, oh, I should do that, or I can do that, or I do that, and then kind of just move on. Like it
yeah,
just you can. It's easy to get into that mindset, and that's the kind of embarrassing mindset that I was referring to. Was just like thinking that I have it figured out. Like
yeah,
so, but when I was thinking about it more, I realized that like the real lessons that come from this, because obviously if you think you're bad at becoming angry, then you're bad at becoming angry, you work on it. But there's deeper lessons that come that emerge from like within the lines. And so I had a book that I read recently that I forgot to bring. I'm sorry, but I have it pulled up on my phone. It's called How to Think by Alan Jacobs. Have you read this book, Trent?
I have not read that one. Yeah, I
Screenshot.
will.
Just like pause your recording time and like take a screenshot. Okay.
Sounds interesting.
So we'll go ahead.
It sounds interesting. Sounds good. I'll look into that.
Yeah, it's written by this guy named Alan Jacobs. He's a professor. I think he's an English professor at Baylor University. He's a Christian, but he's also like really high up in the academic world of like culture studies, really, and just like Christianity within that. So he writes a book called How to Think. And so I thought of this book because having the quality of listening and knowing when to speak and stemming your anger and becoming a better person, I think it really like all you begin to address those things when you begin to address your own character as a person, when you begin at looking at how you develop yourself as a person. And now that I have read this book and taken college classes, I would say that like development of your character is here, and like becoming a better person is like along the line, because you're a better person because you have developed a good character, which comes from developing good habits. But I think there's another thing, like there's like a prequel that I think we don't talk about as much, and it's learning how to think properly, like how to think well in this world that we live in. And this is the whole thesis of the book, is helping you get better at thinking, which is like it's like sounds like crazy, like mind blowing, like whoa, like thinking, but it's a very practical book. It's like, look, everything you do comes from how you think about things, because how you think about things evolves into doing things, and doing things evolves into who you are. Who you are evolves into what you do. What you do is everything. And so reading in between the lines of the passage gets me into this concept of just like thinking well. So the book kind of talks about changing your worldview subtly and confronting fear of changing worldviews. I think when reading this passage, I think there can be a lot of fear. Like if you are able to understand that you have deep down like resentment for someone or something, or anger, then I think there's a lot of fear in addressing that. Like it's like it's also like lazy. It could be laziness. Like I just don't want to put up the effort to do that. This door just like opened by itself.
No worries.
There's just like a ghost moment. Oh, it just
Well, so every one of these we've done, there's moments like this, like dogs barking or something, and it's easy to edit this stuff out.
Okay.
So just really quick back to what you mentioned there. I was listening to Rob Bell's podcast last week, and he was talking about facing change, like in the future. And he said that one of the things that all humans do, I would assume most humans, is that we face change. We look at change with fear and anxiety. And I'm wondering if that, dealing with anger toward another person, that's facing change. Because to deal with that means I have to let go of that anger. I have to restore that relationship. And it's kind of comfortable in the moment, maybe holding on to the anger, but the thought of changing that and humbling myself, that. So I think even relational changes like that can be faced with fear. And oftentimes I think fear is dealt with through anger. And it's, so yeah, it just really dovetails in with what things are talking about.
Yeah, that's perfect, because like really the main ideas of this book come out of like, okay, you have to change your worldview, how you accept the world into you, and that's fearful. That's like scary. but also you have to change how you work with other people. So Alan Jacobs just kind of says like what did he say? Let's see. Real change comes from when you think with other people and with different people. And so he's advocating for like, okay, if you're a Christian, you need to follow the right accounts, people that like are like-minded with you, but also you have to follow um, the accounts of like people who like subscribe to Islam or are atheists, even better. Like you have to be able to think with these people in order to learn how to think correctly.
Yeah.
And so it's a very like social thing, and it's also like a very inward thing, and they're both very scary. And so when you look at the phrase, like when you're addressing the most perplexing statement of the passage, which is humbly accept the word placed in you, um, which I sort of read that statement to talk about calling and purpose. Like the word placed in me, I read that to be my calling, my purpose in this world, what I am put here to do. And so when you think about that phrase in terms of that, it addresses like our core struggle. And this is one that like I'm literally in right now. It's like, who am I? I'm graduating college. Where do I go? What do I do? What do I need to do? Where do I need to live? How do I need to live? Do I need to be like, should I be looking for jobs, or should I be like content with my life? It's just like the purpose of like why I'm here is like my core struggle right now. And I think it's all of our core struggles, but like it's really hitting me hard right now. And I think a part of it hits the college or the high school senior who's going into college, because your college career, or if you're deciding to go to college or to not go to college, or what to do after you kind of get this symbolic social moment where you're turning 18 and you're an adult and you're coming out of your household, you get a lot of the same feeling of like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? And people who go to college really just defer that feeling for years. And they're like, okay, now that I have like a degree, like now I'll know what to do. And like, actually that's completely false. Like a lot of people, unless you're like a nurse or something, like unless you go into a very practical, like vocation, then you still don't really know what you want to do. You just like put off that feeling for 4 years. And so that phrase, humbly accept the word placed in you, hits me right now as, what's your purpose? And so I think when you address that, the book kind of states of a way to get at that end goal and purpose in order to make the world a better place. It requires that you do really two things. And it kind of it helps you get to like figuring out what you want to do with your life. And the first thing is kind of developing like a logical worldview where you're thinking well, you're making good decisions. You're analyzing the pros and the cons of things. Like in the sense of like, okay, George Floyd dies. How am I going to think of this? It's logical to think that like, they broke the law and they killed him, but also like you have to think about the other view, like what was the story that we're not hearing. And so you're thinking about world problems in ways that's like, okay, I'm fair to both sides, and then I will make my decision. Once I hear everything and I'm going to seek the truth in the facts, then I will accept it. That's kind of like what I mean by logical thinking.
Sure.
And when you can really develop that, you've got that first thing. And the second thing is completely the opposite, and it's developing your emotional response to things. And this is something that I really struggle with. Like I am very logical in thinking, but I don't really think with my emotions. It's hard for me to access my emotions. And this book really hit me because it kind of just said, you have to have a certain type of character that joins your emotional feelings with your analytical power. And that produces meaningful action. And the actions are meaningful because when your emotional construct is like properly cultivated, then your responses to the world and what happens to you are valid to what the world asks of you.
Mm.
And that might not make sense, but it's really saying like, okay, when you see mountains, what do you think? Like when you see like the Rocky Mountains, do you feel like this emotional chill that comes over you because of the beauty? Because if you don't, that's what they're asking of you. That like God put those mountains on there to be beautiful. And if you don't like take the time, or if you're not feeling that like awe and that beauty, then you're not accessing your emotional construct as much.
Yeah.
And that forces you to not think well, and it goes back into that timeline. If you don't think well, then you don't develop good habits, then you don't develop a good character, and then you don't get at what the word was placed in you.
Yeah.
And so this is how I'm thinking of this whole passage. It's like, okay, I need to figure out what my purpose is, but I have to before I can even do that, I got to do these other things.
Yeah.
But
just
go
real
ahead.
quick,
Yeah.
I just want to say, just incredibly good stuff, especially about the critical thinking. And I think a component of the critical thinking in when I assess um, the various sides, the various perspectives, and then what's my action going to be based on, and then also assessing, okay, what are the consequences? If I respond this way or this way or this way, what are the potential consequences of that? And then just another really quick aside, because that emotional thing is a definite struggle for me. I'm an Enneagram 5, which fives definitely we definitely definitely live kind of, we step aside from emotion. It's not that my emotions aren't there, but I'm here and I kind of look over here, my emotions are over there, and I don't always engage them in the moments of my life. And so a spiritual practice for me has been over this last year or two, um, when I'm in a moment, when I'm in a situation, I both ask myself, what do I think? And then I immediately have to ask myself, what am I feeling? I have to really work to integrate feelings and emotions. And I think it's that integration of the two that lets me respond in the most authentic way to the world. And I think you kind of addressed that a minute ago, but integration leads to authenticity there, for me and the world that experiences me. So anyway, sorry about that.
No, yeah, I think it's hard to think about that. And like I wrote down in like my little notes thing, like um, the details of all these things are different for every person. Like you might have you might be too emotional. Like you might let your emotions drive you too much and not be thinking of things. Like if you like chose to be active this summer in advocacy for like the social like movements like Black Lives Matter and stuff, if you were only acting on emotion, then you have good intentions, but like that you weren't accessing your logical like your full like experience. And so the details are different because like you might want to be a like artist. I want to go into like public health, and the figuring out those details are different, but like really what's the same is figuring out the end of that verse, which is like purpose in God's word in you is your purpose. If God's in you, then he's flowing out of you. And like everyone has to accept that, and everyone has to deal with that in the same way. And if you subscribe to being a Christian, or at least following like Jesus and what he did and said, then your purpose is the same as everyone else's that does that, which is you're here to make the world a better place.
Yeah, so
like whatever that means.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Here's what I think is where the beauty lies in what you're talking about, especially for younger people who are trying to figure it out. I think the sooner we can figure out the why or the what. I think the why and what are the same. Why am I here? What am I doing here? If we can answer that question, I believe that I'm here, that my what and why is I'm here to bring glory to God as best I can. And so the sooner I can figure out, you can figure out the why and the what of my life, then the how, then the how is like, it kind of doesn't matter. But yet the sky's the limit. The how could be anything. Um,
Yeah.
I could do this how for 5 years and then do another how for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Once I figure out that what and why, then God gives us so much freedom. I mean that, and the how can be led, you know, what once the word of God is taken into our hearts and we realize the truth of our why, then God really kind of gives us the desire of our hearts as we
Mhm.
figure out that why. And so it's a beautiful thing. So I really am excited that you took that verse in that direction. That's a real passion of mine for sure.
And I would say like there's a lot of ways to say that though, like figuring out what the what is. There's a
Yeah.
lot of ways to think of it. The one that makes the most sense to me is the phrase like making the world a better place,
Mhm.
um, because it's really like it's really broad. That could mean like starting a nonprofit or like writing research that like helps a lot of people and figures out a problem, or it could be just being a social worker and like living and breathing and talking to people who struggle. It could mean anything, or it could mean like bigger things like that, or it could mean like making a friend at a coffee shop that you see all the time and he looks sad a lot and you know like why, and so you start talking to him and you make a friend like that is your friendship. If it benefits both of you, is making the world a better place. And if you only think of that phrase as like big things like changing the world, then you're really missing that phrase, because like that's our purpose. Like
Yeah.
that's what drives me personally, myself, Easton Davis, is I wake up and I'm like, I don't say this every day obviously, but like I'm like, my purpose here as a Christian is I need to make the world a better place somehow. And like, how do you do that? And so you need to figure out the phrase. If you're like wrestling with this, you need to figure out the phrase that works for you the most. Like some
Yeah.
people, it's like understanding God's, like being Christ-like, being a light, a lamp unto my feet. He is a lamp unto my feet, but like me being the light of the world, like people like that one. So it really,
Well,
if
and
you
for me,
find what,
the idea of friendship and of creating friendships with others, to me is reframed as, um, because of my purpose, that I'm not just making a friend, I'm joining another person on their journey, and I'm wanting them to join me on the journey, because I don't want to do this journey alone. I mean, we were not created to do this alone, and so that, like, talk about renaming and rephrasing things, that really helps me as well. So
can I kind of like, I feel like my thoughts on that last part were like very like everywhere. So I kind of want to like give a final, like if you watch
yeah,
anything, watch this next 30 seconds kind of
yeah,
thing. So if you can think
yeah,
properly, if you can develop your thinking and experience within the world, which is based on this book, How to Think, then you can develop habits that are really good. And if you have good habits, then you can develop character. And this character um, really is a makeup of your purpose as a Christian, which is, to me, making the world a better place. And so that's where we find that verse, is like the verse has skipped those like first three things, and it's like, okay, you need to like humbly accept the word placed in you. But I'm saying before you can even address that, you need to like look at those two other things before that, and
yeah,
to really like accept that word or your purpose or what it means to make the world a better place. You need to first assess like what it really means to be fully alive and what it means to be fully human. And so those are like big ideas, but like I just definitely think that like even if you're 14 and you're watching this and you're like, what am I like? I can't like I haven't experienced full humanity yet. That you still can't, like you are a full human. And so like you can still be fully alive in wherever you are right now. You don't have to be like graduated from high school or graduated from college or an adult. Like these are like lies that we tell ourselves. Like, okay, when I'm an adult, I'm going to figure out what it means to be fully human. But
Yeah.
it just changes what that means. And you can do it when you're 15.
Yeah. Well, at
And that's really what this verse is going at.
yeah, at every stage of, that's a really good point. At every stage of life, we are fully human. Um, it's just, especially if you're looking at it from like a spiral dynamics kind of standpoint, nobody is less of a human at at the blue stage as opposed to the green stage. It's just we're fully at every stage. It's just, it really goes down to the thinking. It's the thinking is what changes at each stage, and the thinking is opened up. So
Mhm.
really, really good ideas there. I like that.
I hope that wasn't too like confusing. I didn't
Yeah,
develop my thoughts on that completely. Kind of just got raw
yeah. No,
thoughts.
I think that's great. So kind of just to wrap up for people watching, I know you did your summary there, but do you have anything else that you kind of want to add to wrap up the whole idea?
Um, I think that like if you want to think practically about it, I think like if you're in high school or you're about to be in high school, I really want to re-emphasize the point of like you're gonna feel this feeling of like, what am I gonna do with my life? And before you can even think about like, okay, and make that thing be good,
Mm,
you're really gonna just have to figure out what am I gonna do. And so I just like want to say that like I've been there and it's still there. Like if you kind of expect that feeling to go away just because you're hitting like life markers of like graduating high school or graduating college or getting married, just different, like that question won't answer itself with, and trust me, I've tried. Um, that question won't answer itself when you get these like life markers.
yeah,
So then you're like, okay, that helps me in no way, Easton. I would say if I could go back, I would say like you really like if you're sitting there and you're like, I have no idea what I'm good at. I don't know what I like to do. I would say one, that's because like you just haven't figured it out yet, and you need to like do more things. Like figure out if there's like an art studio and like just go look at art and then go try to do art, make pottery. Just like you need to figure out like try to play an instrument. You need to like try things out so you can figure out what you're good at.
yeah.
And once you figure out that you're good at something, like consider sticking with that thing, because like I know tons of people who have gotten college degrees and then they go on to do the thing that they really love to do and had nothing to do with their degree that they paid like thousands of dollars for.
Yeah, yeah,
And had they just figured, if they hadn't had that fear of like, okay, maybe playing music doesn't like take me, it won't like give me the stability I need as an adult. Well, really, I have friends that are playing music when they got out of college, like for a living, and are now in debt because they got this other degree that they didn't really want to do
oh,
in the
yeah,
first place. And so just if you have something, if you're in a better place because like you have like you're like, oh, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm good at art. That's something, and you really need to like cultivate that. And you can obviously go do whatever you want to do in addition to that, but never like forget that. Like never like lose that part of you. And I always plug this, and then this is the last thing. Here's crazy. I will always plug.
so you're
You don't
looking at
have to go to
yourself while you
college.
talk.
I
You're not
am
looking at
looking
me.
on
Okay.
my talk. I'm making sure I'm getting all the good angles. Um, I always want to throw it out there. Always, always, always. You don't have to go to college. Like college is changing. The world is changing. The working world is changing. If you have an opportunity to do a trade, if you want to be a mechanic, if you want to do like plumbing, like literally do woodworking, like you don't have to go to college. And if you want to, that's great. But too many people think that they need a college degree to do anywhere in life, and the world is changing in a way that is becoming less true.
Yeah.
Because really what it is like, okay, you have an undergraduate college degree, and really to get anywhere in like prestigious these days, you have to get another degree.
Yeah.
And in like 40 years, it's going to be like, okay, if you don't have a PhD in something, then you can't really do anything.
Yeah.
And so I will always plug that, because I don't want you to at least not think about it, at least not think about doing something else. And maybe that plays into my last point, which is like, I have something that's good and that I like to do. And so don't waste your money if you don't have to.
Yeah. And so what I think is, you know, you can get into a prestigious career and make the world a better place, but you can also make the world a better place from any place, from anywhere. And going back to what you just said, I've got somebody very close to me that went to college and got the degree based on what they were good at and passionate about, and then realized, okay, I want my work to be something else. I just want to enjoy that. And Tracy Coons at church, who, like phenomenal musician. You talk to any musicians here in Tulsa, and everybody knows him and knows how good he is. And he told me several years ago, he said, Trent, he said, I love music. It is the passion of my life, but I didn't want to struggle my whole life. He said, so I got a degree, and I do work in IT and the technical field so that I can do what I love. And I don't have to struggle in doing what I love. And so
Yeah.
it was pretty cool. Well, man, great stuff. Really, really good conversation that could go on even more, because this passage is so hard. And my takeaway, and this is what's so cool, that we can have different viewpoints. My takeaway as I look at this passage is that is like stinking impossible. I mean, nearly everything it says in the passage is impossible on my own. And my only hope is God's Spirit enabling me enabling me to get rid of the moral filth, enabling me to not be so angry, to be a better listener, because I don't do those things on my own. And so this whole thing, it can be really overwhelming. You can look at it and go, man, that's too hard, but it's really not. And it goes back to the humility thing at the end, humbly accepting the word of God. And it's about changing your thinking, changing thinking from, oh, this is impossible, to, oh, God's going to enable me, so it is possible. And so, yeah, I think everything goes back to that thinking. I look forward to reading that book. That sounds,
Yeah, it's really easy to read too. It's not like a crazy, like if you think about it in high school, like you can definitely understand it. Like it's short too. It's like this thick.
yeah, that's good.
Super easy to read.
That's good to know. Well, Easton, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Good luck in this next semester, just figuring out stuff. And life's exciting. It's always exciting. So anyway, well, hey, have a great holiday, and peace, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you.